welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be talking all about habits from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
Yeah, you're interested in learning how to break bad habits and build good ones.
And so we'll be your guides through all the science and strategies in the book.
Get ready to discover some surprising facts about why we do what we do.
And how even tiny changes can lead to big results.
It's really fascinating.
One of the things that really stood out to me was this idea of habits being like compound interest for self-improvement.
Oh, yeah.
We all know compound interest is like this financial superpower, right?
Yeah.
But Clear applies the same principle to like our personal growth.
It's a brilliant analogy.
Like even a small amount of money invested consistently can like grow exponentially over time.
Right, and it's the same with habits.
So tiny changes, if you just apply them consistently.
Can make huge differences in the long run.
And I love that plane analogy he uses to really drive that point home.
Yeah, what is that?
Like imagine you're flying a plane from Los Angeles to New York City.
Okay.
If you adjust the course even just 1% off track, that tiny change over the whole flight could land you in like Washington, D.C. instead.
Wow.
It's a big difference for a small change.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So now think about your own goals.
Okay.
Like let's say you want to write a novel. If you just commit to writing like one page every day,
Yeah.
by the end of the year, you'll have a 365-page manuscript
That's true.
with just those small actions.
You're right. Yeah.
Okay, so we've established how powerful small habits can be.
Right.
Now let's get into like the nitty-gritty of how habits actually form.
Okay.
Clear breaks down the habit loop into 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward.
Right.
And each stage plays a crucial role in like forming the habit and continuing the habit.
It's a loop.
It is a loop.
Like think about our ancestors.
Okay.
Evolving to crave things like salt, sugar, and fat.
Right. Those cravings made sense back then.
Why is that?
Well, because those things signaled calorie-dense foods,
Yeah.
which were like rare and valuable, you know, for survival.
That makes sense.
But in today's world, where we're surrounded by calorie-dense foods everywhere,
Oh, yeah.
those cravings can lead to things like overeating and even health problems.
It's true. We have to kind of fight against those cravings.
So understanding this 4-stage loop and like how those cravings are triggered, that's really key to breaking bad habits and building healthier ones.
So it's not just about willpower.
Right.
It's about understanding how these things work.
Yeah, like the underlying mechanisms that drive our behavior.
Yeah.
And this is where Clear's insights about identity come in.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, he suggests that lasting change comes from shifting your identity.
So instead of focusing on outcomes, you focus on who you are.
Right. Like it's not just saying, I want to lose weight. It's about saying, I am the type of person who prioritizes healthy habits.
You're changing your identity.
Exactly.
And this is really well illustrated in the story of Laszlo Polgar.
Oh, yeah. Who was that?
He decided to make his children chess prodigies. And he basically created an environment where chess was life for them.
It's crazy. All 3 of his daughters became chess champions.
They did. It's incredible.
That's wild.
It really just shows how important your identity is.
Like by immersing his children in this chess-centric world, he basically made them believe that being obsessed with chess was normal.
Right. It was like their whole world revolved around chess.
Yeah, like he basically hacked their brains.
I mean, he definitely created an environment that set them up for success.
Wired for success.
Absolutely.
And that kind of leads us to this next point.
Okay.
About how we can consciously design our own environments.
Like how we organize our space.
Exactly, to make good habits easier and bad habits harder.
So make good habits obvious and bad habits invisible.
Exactly. Like, for example, you mentioned you're trying to read more.
Oh, yeah.
What if you just like put a book on your pillow every morning?
I hope that.
It would make it obvious.
Yeah, and it'd be right there.
So easy.
Yeah, no excuses.
And if you want to reduce your screen time, that's a big one these days. It is a big one. Put your phone in a drawer.
Oh, yeah. Out of sight, out of mind.
Make it less visible.
Less tempting.
It's crazy how these small changes to our environments can have such a big impact.
It really is.
And it ties into Clear's 2-minute rule as well.
What's that?
Which makes new habits feel like achievable and not so intimidating.
Tell me more.
It's all about breaking down a habit into tiny little 2-minute actions.
Okay.
Like instead of like aiming for a 30-minute workout,
Yeah, that can be tough.
just focus on putting on your workout clothes.
Yeah, just starting is the hardest part.
And once you're in your workout clothes, you're way more likely to actually work out right.
Yeah, you might as well at that point.
Exactly. It's just those small wins that build that momentum and make the habit stick.
Yeah, momentum is so important.
I love how Clear emphasizes making those first 2 minutes easy.
Yeah, what are some examples?
Like changing read before bed each night to just read one page.
Okay.
Or do 30 minutes of yoga to just take out my yoga mat.
Yeah, just make it super simple.
Those micro actions
Yeah.
serve as a gateway to the full habit.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's much less intimidating than thinking about the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Right? And once that 2-minute version of the habit becomes like automatic,
Yeah.
you can gradually increase it, right?
Like the duration or complexity.
Exactly.
But you gotta stay in that sweet spot of challenge.
The Goldilocks rule.
Ah, yes, not too hard, not too soft.
But just, right.
So how does that apply to habits?
Well, the idea is that habits are the most enjoyable and sustainable when they challenge us just enough, but not too much.
Makes sense.
It's closely tied to achieving flow state,
What's that?
that feeling of being completely absorbed in what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, like being in the zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Clear argues that we enter flow state
Yeah.
when we're working on tasks that are like slightly beyond our current abilities.
If it's too easy.
We get bored.
Yeah, and if it's too hard, we get frustrated.
And give up.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
So we have to find that Goldilocks zone.
That sweet spot.
Exactly, that keeps us engaged and motivated.
Yeah, I like that.
And this leads to another interesting point that Clear raises.
Okay.
The difference between like professionals and amateurs.
Interesting.
So he argues that professionals stick to the schedule
Okay.
while amateurs let life get in the way.
So it's about showing up consistently.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Exactly.
Like treat your habits like a job.
With a set schedule.
Yeah, and a commitment.
Whether you feel like it or not.
Regardless of like mood or motivation levels.
Yeah, discipline over motivation.
That's powerful stuff.
It is.
And this is where I think accountability and rewards come in.
Oh, yeah, how so?
Well, Clear talks about habit contracts and accountability partners to keep us on track.
Right, like having someone to answer to.
Exactly.
Makes a big difference.
He also emphasizes that we need to make good habits satisfying.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, because our brains are wired to prioritize like immediate gratification.
Oh, yeah, instant rewards. Right.
So how do we bridge that gap?
Between like the long-term benefits of good habits and our desire for like instant gratification.
Yeah, that seems tricky.
It is tricky.
Because it seems like they're at odds.
They often are.
Yeah.
But Clear offers some really clever strategies for doing just that.
Like what?
One way is to add a little bit of immediate pleasure to habits that pay off in the long run.
So like make those good habits more enjoyable.
Exactly.
Instead of focusing on the delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Find a way to enjoy the process.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Like, remember that couple that wanted to reduce their spending on eating out?
Oh, yeah. What did they do?
They created a savings account labeled Trip to Europe.
I love that.
And every time they cooked dinner at home,
instead of eating out,
they transferred $50 into that account.
That's brilliant.
So they linked the good habit
of cooking at home
with the immediate reward of like saving for a future trip.
So they made it more satisfying in the moment.
Exactly.
While still working towards their long-term goal.
Oh.
And that's just one example.
Yeah. I bet there are tons of ways to do that.
There are tons of ways.
To make those good habits more appealing.
It's all about getting creative.
I'm feeling more motivated already.
Me too. It's so helpful to have all these practical strategies.
It is.
And don't forget about accountability.
Right.
Clear tells the story of Brian Harris, who used a habit contract.
Oh, yeah. For what?
To stay committed to his weight loss goals.
Oh.
He had financial penalties.
Like if he didn't do it.
If he didn't meet his daily targets.
Oh, wow.
For like carbs and protein and weigh-ins and sprints.
He went all in.
He did. And he even had to wear an Alabama hat.
Oh, no.
If he skipped his sprints, which was like the rival of his beloved Auburn team.
That's rough.
But it worked.
So the contract worked.
Having those concrete consequences and his wife and trainer as accountability partners helped him stay on track.
That's great.
It's amazing how a simple agreement can be so motivating.
I know. It's like you're making a commitment to yourself and to other people.
It's powerful.
It is.
We've covered so much ground.
I know, yeah.
We've talked about like the compound effect of habits, the 4 stages of the habit loop, the importance of identity,
the 2-minute rule,
the Goldilocks rule, accountability, rewards.
It's a lot.
This book is packed.
It is.
But before we dive into the next set of insights, I want you, the listener, to just take a moment
Yeah.
and reflect on what stands out to you so far.
Yeah, think about your own experiences with habits.
We'll be right back after a short break.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And don't forget to share with your friends.
So we've been talking about how to make good habits stick.
Mm-hmm.
But what about breaking bad habits?
Yeah, those are always tough.
They can feel impossible sometimes.
Like they have a life of their own.
They really do.
But Clear offers a really interesting perspective on this.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just trying to resist temptation.
Through willpower.
Right, just like white-knuckling it.
Yeah.
He suggests we focus on making those bad habits impractical to do.
So it's not about summoning superhuman willpower.
Right.
It's about removing the cues that lead to those bad habits in the first place.
Exactly, like making it harder to do the bad thing.
I like that, make it harder to do the bad thing.
Yeah, it's like putting obstacles in your own way.
So do you have an example of what that looks like?
Absolutely. Clear tells this story about a guy named John Henry Patterson
Okay.
who owned a saloon back in the 1880s.
A saloon.
Yeah, like a
Ugh.
bar.
Okay.
And Patterson suspected his employees were stealing money.
Skimming off the top.
Yeah, but he couldn't prove it.
I guess back then it was all cash.
Right, all the transactions were done manually.
So easy to pocket a few bucks here and there.
Exactly, and no one would be the wiser.
Wow.
But then one day, Patterson sees an ad for this new invention.
Okay, what was it?
The incorruptible cashier.
What?
The first cash register.
Oh, wow.
This thing forced employees to ring up every transaction.
Ah, so no more skimming?
No more skimming.
It made stealing basically impossible.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, so this cash register totally changed the game.
It-
It wasn't about relying on people's honesty anymore.
Right.
It was about changing the system.
Yeah, the environment itself.
So employee theft just vanished overnight,
Practically.
and Patterson's business went from losing money to making a profit.
All thanks to a cash register.
That's a crazy story.
It is.
But it shows how modifying the environment can be way more effective.
Than relying on willpower alone.
So if I'm trying to cut down on late-night snacking,
Mm-hmm.
I could just remove all the snacks from my kitchen.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
And you can apply that to the digital world, too.
Oh, yeah? How so?
Like if you're trying to reduce your social media use,
Mm-hmm.
you could delete those apps from your phone.
So just make it harder to access them.
Exactly. The extra friction of having to reinstall them
Yeah.
might make you think twice before you scroll.
It's so interesting how this applies to both the physical and digital world.
It is. We're surrounded by cues and triggers
They're very-
that influence our behavior.
And speaking of the digital world,
Mhm.
Clear also talks about how technology can be a double-edged sword when it comes to habits.
Oh, yeah. How so?
It can both facilitate bad habits
Yeah, like what?
and empower us to break them.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Think about binge watching.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's so easy to get sucked in
Why is that?
because streaming services automatically play the next episode.
Oh, yeah, they make it so easy.
They remove all the friction.
So you just keep watching.
Just one more episode. Right?
The never-ending cycle.
I know, I've definitely been there.
Me too.
But on the flip side,
Mm-hmm.
you can also use technology to set limits on your screen time.
Oh, yeah, there are a ton of apps for that.
There are.
To help us manage our digital habits.
It's reassuring that technology can also be a tool.
To break those bad habits.
Exactly, as long as we use it consciously.
Right. It's
Yeah.
all about being mindful.
Okay, so we've talked about making bad habits harder,
Mm-hmm.
but Clear also talks about making good habits more satisfying.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It's where I think a lot of people struggle.
Why is that?
Well, we know we should do certain things.
Like exercise or eat healthy?
Right. But it doesn't always feel good,
Yeah, it's not always fun.
especially in the moment.
Right. It's the delayed gratification.
Eggs.
That's hard for our brains to grasp.
It goes back to how our brains are wired.
Right. Totally. We're wired for pleasure and avoiding pain.
It's a fundamental principle.
Yeah, we're all seeking pleasure in some way.
But how do we apply that to habits that don't feel pleasurable?
Like flossing our teeth or saving money.
Right, those things that we know are good for us.
But they don't always feel good in the moment.
This is where creativity comes in.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Clear shares this story about a public health study in Karachi, Pakistan.
Okay.
They were trying to encourage hand washing.
To reduce the spread of disease.
Right, which is so important.
Yeah, especially in densely populated areas.
But it's one of those habits that people often neglect.
It's easy to forget.
And just telling people to wash their hands more often?
That wasn't enough.
It was.
They had to make hand washing more appealing.
So what did they do?
They partnered with Procter & Gamble
Yep.
to provide the community with Safeguard soap,
Safeguard soap.
which was like a premium brand in Pakistan at the time.
Ah, so they made hand washing feel luxurious.
Exactly. They elevated the experience.
That's smart.
And people loved it.
So hand washing rates increased.
Dramatically.
And that must have had a positive impact on public health.
Oh, it did. The rates of diarrhea fell by 52%.
Oh,
Pneumonia by 48%.
that's huge.
And impetigo, a skin infection, by 35%.
That's incredible just from using better soap.
It's amazing.
And it shows the power of making a habit more enjoyable
Right. It can have a ripple effect.
on individual and community well-being.
Exactly. And here's the really interesting part.
What's that?
The positive effects lasted even years after the study ended.
Really?
Yeah, over 95% of the households that got the free soap
Mm-hmm.
still had a dedicated hand washing station 6 years later.
So the habit stuck even after the incentive was gone
Exactly. They had made hand washing a part of their routine.
because it felt good.
Right. They enjoyed it.
I love that story.
It's a great example of how making a habit enjoyable can make it stick.
So we need to find ways to make our good habits intrinsically rewarding.
Exactly, for long-term success.
And this brings up another challenge,
Okay.
the delayed return nature of a lot of good habits.
Yeah, like what?
Well, we don't always see the immediate benefits of healthy eating
Or saving money.
or exercising regularly.
Right. Those things take time to pay off.
It's a challenge because our brains are wired for that instant gratification.
We want those quick rewards.
It's a legacy from our evolutionary past, right?
When survival often depended on those immediate payoffs.
So how do we bridge that gap
Between our desire for instant gratification,
and the long-term benefits of good habits?
it's a tough one.
It is.
But Clear suggests getting creative
Okay.
and adding some immediate pleasure to those habits that pay off later.
So hack our brain's reward system
Ex-
to align with our long-term goals.
I like that.
So can you give me an example of what that looks like?
Sure, remember that couple saving for their Europe trip?
Yeah?
They found a way to link cooking at home, which might not be inherently thrilling,
It's not always exciting.
to the pleasure of anticipating their vacation.
So every time they cooked,
Mm-hmm.
they were moving closer to their goal.
And that visualization gave them immediate satisfaction.
That's brilliant.
It is.
It's like injecting some gratification into a habit that might otherwise feel like a chore.
Exactly. Make it fun.
Okay, so we've talked about making good habits obvious,
Mm-hmm.
easy,
Attract.
satisfying.
Yeah.
What other tools can we use to make these habits stick?
Well, Clear is a big fan of habit tracking.
Habit tracking.
Yeah. And he outlines 3 key benefits.
Okay, tell me more.
First, tracking gives you a visual measure of your progress,
Yeah, I can see that.
which can be super motivating.
Especially when you're not seeing those immediate results,
Right. It's like a reminder that you're making progress.
even if it's slow progress.
Exactly. Every little bit counts.
It's like ticking things off a to-do list.
It gives you that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
The second benefit is that tracking helps you focus on the process.
Instead of the outcome.
Right. So instead of obsessing over losing 10 pounds, you focus on showing up for your workouts.
It's about celebrating the small wins.
Exactly. Consistency over intensity.
Yeah.
And finally, and maybe most importantly,
Okay.
habit tracking can be really satisfying in itself.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
There's something so rewarding about seeing your progress visually,
Whether it's crossing things off a list
marking X's on a calendar.
or using a habit tracking app.
Yeah, it's a positive feedback loop.
It really is.
You get that little dopamine hit.
And that makes you more likely to stick with it.
Exactly.
So we've got all these great strategies.
We do.
Making good habits obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying.
And tracking them.
But what about when motivation inevitably dips?
Oh, yeah, those days when you just don't feel like it.
We're all human rights.
We are.
So what do we do then?
Well, this is where the idea of being a professional comes in.
What does that mean?
Clear says that professionals stick to the schedule, no matter how they feel.
So amateurs let their emotions dictate their actions,
Exactly.
but professionals show up regardless,
It's about treating those desired habits like a job,
with a set schedule and a commitment,
rain or shine.
even when we don't feel like it.
Exactly. He says we should fall in love with boredom.
Fall in love with boredom.
Yeah, find joy in the repetition.
That sounds counterintuitive.
I know, but think about athletes or musicians.
Okay.
They spend countless hours practicing.
Honing their skills.
And it's not always glamorous,
Exciting.
but there's a deep satisfaction in that dedication.
And the pursuit of mastery.
Exactly, and it goes back to identity.
Okay.
When you see yourself as the type of person who shows up consistently,
Yeah.
it becomes easier to push through those moments of resistance.
It's not about waiting for inspiration.
Right.
It's about having a system,
That supports your habit.
regardless of how you feel.
Yeah, emotions are fleeting.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
And it ties into another concept that Clear talks about.
Okay, what's that?
Finding a game where the odds are in your favor.
What does he mean by that?
He's talking about understanding your strengths and weaknesses,
Okay.
and then choosing habits and goals that align with those strengths.
So playing to your natural advantages.
Exactly, instead of trying to force yourself into a mold that doesn't fit.
Yeah, like Michael Phelps.
The swimmer,
Yeah, he was literally built for swimming.
with his long torso and big wingspan,
He found a game that played to his strengths.
and he dominated.
He did.
So we need to find our own version of that.
Exactly. A game where we have a natural advantage.
But that might take some exploration,
It might.
trial and error.
Be honest with yourself about your limitations.
Recognize that we don't have to be good at everything.
Right. Focus on where you can excel,
Find that sweet spot where our abilities and passions intersect,
where our efforts are amplified.
and success feels more attainable.
It's a journey of self-discovery.
It is.
It's ongoing.
Even when we find a game that seems to favor us,
Mhm.
we're bound to hit plateaus and setbacks.
It's like part of life.
It can be discouraging.
Yeah, you can feel like you're not making progress.
Or that your efforts are futile.
Right.
But Claire says that's when we need to reflect and review.
Take a step back and analyze.
What's working and what's not.
It's not about blindly repeating the same actions.
Right.
It's about adapting and making adjustments.
So being flexible
Yeah.
and adjusting our approach when needed.
Exactly. He calls it the reflection and review habit,
I like that.
where we regularly assess our progress
Celebrate the wins,
and identify areas for improvement.
like elite athletes.
Oh, yeah, they do this all the time.
They're constantly analyzing their performance.
And making adjustments based on the data.
It's a systematic approach to improvement,
And we can all benefit from it.
whether it's journaling
Using a habit tracker.
or having regular check-ins with an accountability partner.
Yeah, make time for reflection.
Okay, so now for a curveball.
Okay, I'm ready.
How can our own identities become roadblocks
Oh, that's interesting.
to continuous improvement
Well, Clear says that a strong sense of identity can be powerful.
for positive change?
Right.
But it can also be limiting
How so?
if we become too attached to a particular identity.
Even when it's no longer serving us.
We can get stuck in a certain self-image
Right, even if it's not accurate.
or hopeful.
Yeah, like if you see yourself as a healthy person,
Mm-hmm.
you might resist acknowledging unhealthy habits.
Or if you identify as a successful entrepreneur.
You might be hesitant to admit to mistakes.
Our egos can get in the way of growth,
They can.
so we need to break those beliefs.
Examine our assumptions about ourselves.
Be willing to let go of identities that are no longer serving us.
Embrace a growth mindset.
See ourselves as works in progress.
Constantly evolving,
I love that.
it takes the pressure off.
Yeah, no need to be perfect.
And it opens us up to new possibilities.
It's about aligning our actions with our desired identity,
So walking the walk.
not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And those actions create a feedback loop
Reinforcing our beliefs.
and making it easier to stick with those habits.
It's a beautiful cycle of self-reinforcement.
It is.
And don't forget about emotions.
Oh, yeah. They play a big role.
Tell me more about the emotional side of habit change.
Well, even though we might have logical reasons for wanting to change,
Mm-hmm.
it's our emotions that drive our actions.
So we can be rational and logical.
But only after we've been emotional.
That explains why we sometimes make decisions.
That we know aren't good for us.
Our emotions override our logic.
They do.
And that's where cravings come in.
Right. Those intense desires.
You need to make good habits more appealing.
And bad habits less so.
So understand what drives those cravings.
And use that knowledge to our advantage. Clear has this interesting equation for satisfaction.
Okay, what is it?
Satisfaction equals liking minus wanting.
Liking minus wanting.
So if our wants always outweigh our likes,
We'll never be satisfied.
we'll always be chasing something that never fulfills us.
Like chasing the next shiny object.
Exactly, always wanting more.
That's a vicious cycle.
It is.
So we need to manage our expectations.
And find contentment in what we have.
Happiness is relative.
It's not about reaching some arbitrary level of success or wealth.
It's about appreciating the journey,
The present moment.
the small joys.
Exactly. Find that inner peace.
That doesn't depend on external circumstances.
Clear says that true peace comes when we don't turn our observations into problems.
So accepting things as they are,
Without judgment or resistance.
letting go of the need to control.
Finding beauty in the present moment.
That's a profound insight,
It is.
especially in our fast-paced world.
Where we're always striving for more.
It's easy to forget to appreciate what we have.
And the simple joy of being present.
This has been such a great discussion.
It has.
We've covered so much.
But there's still more to explore.
We'll be back after a short break. We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into atomic habits.
It's been a great discussion.
One of the big takeaways for me has been this idea of focusing on systems, not just goals.
Yeah, Clear makes a strong case for that.
Goals are about the outcomes, the results.
And systems are about the processes that get you there.
So instead of fixating on like losing 10 pounds
You'd focus on building a system,
for healthy eating and exercise,
like setting yourself up for success,
creating a framework that makes it more automatic.
instead of relying on willpower.
It's like building a house, right?
Okay.
If you just focus on the finished product,
You might overlook the important stuff,
like the foundation, the framing.
systems that make it strong and resilient.
Exactly.
And Clear gives us a framework for designing good systems.
Tell me more.
He calls them the 4 laws of behavior change.
Okay, I like that.
Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Those are good.
They're simple but effective.
And they really align with everything we've been talking about.
About the habit loop and how our brains work.
By making good habits obvious and appealing,
And easy and rewarding.
we're way more likely to repeat them,
And repetition is key.
to make those habits automatic.
Ingrained in our daily lives.
We're basically rewiring our brains,
Through those repeated actions.
which brings us back to starting small.
Right, breaking down those big goals into tiny steps.
The 2-minute rule,
Those gateway habits.
that paved the way for bigger changes.
And it's not about being perfect.
Right, it's about consistency,
Showing up day after day.
even when you don't feel like it.
And being willing to experiment and adjust as you go.
Life is unpredictable.
So our systems need to be flexible.
Adapt to those changes.
It's not about finding the perfect system right away.
It's about continuous improvement,
Embracing that growth mindset.
knowing that we're always learning.
And evolving.
I love that.
It makes the process more like an adventure.
A journey of exploration and discovery.
Exactly.
And speaking of journeys, we can't forget about the role of identity.
In habit formation and behavior change.
Clear says that real transformation starts with a shift in identity,
Not just changing your actions.
but changing who you believe you are,
Becoming the type of person.
who embodies those desired actions.
Naturally and effortlessly.
Aligning our actions with our desired identity
Creates a powerful drive for change.
from within.
Not from external pressure.
Clear suggests asking yourself questions.
Like, what would a healthy person do
Or, what would a successful entrepreneur do?
to guide your choices?
And align them with your aspirations,
It's about stepping into that desired identity.
making choices that are consistent with the person you want to become.
And over time, those choices reinforce your beliefs.
It's a beautiful cycle of self-reinforcement.
It really is.
We take actions that align with our beliefs,
And those actions strengthen those beliefs.
making further positive actions more likely.
It's like building momentum on a flywheel.
The more we align our actions with our belief,
The easier it becomes to keep that wheel spinning.
propelling us towards our goals.
This has been such a great exploration of atomic habits.
I feel like I've learned so much
Me too.
about how to apply these principles to my own life.
Clear makes it all seem so achievable.
As we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yes, the real magic of habits isn't about achieving some specific outcome.
Okay.
It's about the transformation that happens along the way.
So it's not just about checking things off a list.
It's about the person you become in the process.
The journey of self-discovery and growth,
As you cultivate good habits and break free from bad ones,
becoming the best version of yourself.
expanding your capabilities.
That's beautifully said.
It's about embracing the power of small, consistent actions.
Those atomic habits that shape our lives,
I hope this has given our listeners the tools and inspiration.
to start their own journeys of habit transformation.
Remember, even the smallest changes can make a big difference.
What small habit will you start building today?
What tiny step can you take to become the person you want to be?
Every action is a vote for the person you want to become.
So choose wisely, be consistent.
Embrace the power of atomic habits.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And don't forget to share with your friends.